The Second World War ended on September 2nd, 1945. Almost everyone went home. Hiroo Onoda kept fighting for another 29 years. Not because he was lost, not because he had gone mad, but because no one had given him the order to stop. And in the Philippine jungle, hidden beneath a canopy so thick the sun barely reached the ground, he waited. He sharpened his blade. He cleaned his rifle. He believed with complete and absolute certainty that the war was still going on. By the time anyone reached him, the world he had been fighting for had been gone for 3 decades.
The Soldier. Hiroo Onoda was born in 1922 in a small town in Japan. He was raised on loyalty, on discipline, on the belief that a Japanese soldier did not surrender. It was not just a rule, it was a religion. The Japanese Imperial Military Code, Bushido, taught that surrender was the deepest form of disgrace, that death in battle was honorable, that to lay down arms without orders was unthinkable. Onoda absorbed all of it. In 1944, at the age of 22, he was sent to Lubang Island in the Philippines with a simple mission: conduct guerrilla warfare, disrupt enemy operations, and under no circumstances, surrender. His commanding officer gave him one final instruction before he left: "You will continue fighting until you receive a direct order from me to stop. No other order counts." Onoda carried those words into the jungle. He would carry them for the next 3 decades.
The war ends. American forces took Lubang Island in February 1945. Most Japanese soldiers surrendered or were killed. Onoda and 3 companions disappeared into the hills. They had their rifles, they had their orders, they had each other. 6 months later, Japan surrendered. The war was over. Onoda did not believe it. Leaflets were dropped over the jungle, printed announcements of Japan's surrender, urging remaining soldiers to come out. Onoda read one. He decided it was enemy propaganda, a trick designed to lure Japanese soldiers out of hiding. He went back into the trees. The years. 1 year passed, then 5. The Philippine government tried everything. Search parties were sent into the jungle. Onoda's group ambushed them, believing they were enemy patrols. More leaflets were dropped. Newspaper front pages, official announcements, photographs of the Japanese surrender ceremony. Onoda studied each one carefully and concluded that each one was a forgery. In 1950, one of his 3 companions walked out of the jungle and surrendered. Onoda considered him a traitor. In 1954, a second companion was killed in a firefight with Philippine police. Now, there were 2. Onoda and his last remaining companion, Kinshichi Kozuka, continued their guerrilla campaign. They raided villages for food. They burned rice stores to disrupt what they believed were enemy supply lines. They fired on anyone who came near them. Between 1945 and 1974, their activities resulted in the deaths of at least 30 people. 30 people killed in a war that had ended before most of them were born. 1 man left. In 1972, Kozuka was shot and killed by Philippine police during a raid on a village. Onoda was alone. He was 50 years old. He had been in the jungle for 27 years. He kept going. Back in Japan, his family had long assumed he was dead. A funeral had been held. A grave marker had been placed. His name appeared on memorials. The world had moved on from Hiroo Onoda. Hiroo Onoda had not moved on from the world. The Search. In 1974, a young Japanese adventurer named Norio Suzuki decided to go looking for him. Not a military operation, not a government mission, just a young man with a backpack who thought finding Hiroo Onoda would be the adventure of a lifetime. He found him in 4 days, something the entire Philippine military had failed to do in nearly 30 years. Onoda stepped out of the trees, rifle in hand, uniform worn thin, but clean. He was in perfect physical condition. His blade was sharp. Suzuki told him the war was over. Onoda told him he could not stand down without orders from his commanding officer. He would not move without that order. He had not moved in 29 years. He was not going to start now. The order. Suzuki returned to Japan and tracked down Onoda's former commanding officer, Major Yoshimi Taniguchi. Taniguchi was now 77 years old. He was retired. He ran a bookshop. He agreed to go. On March 9th, 1974, Major Taniguchi walked into the Philippine jungle for the last time. He found Onoda at their arranged meeting point. He stood before his former soldier and gave the order. The war was over. The mission was complete. Hiroo Onoda was to lay down his arms. Onoda listened. He stood at attention. He did not speak for a long moment. Then he removed his ammunition from his rifle, unstrapped his sword from his belt, and placed them on the ground. He later said it was the hardest thing he had ever done. Not the years in the jungle, not the hunger, not the loneliness. Laying down the weapons was the hardest part.
After, Hiroo Onoda emerged from the jungle on March 10th, 1974. He was 52 years old. He stepped into a world that had television, commercial aviation, and men who had walked on the moon. He had missed all of it. The Philippine government pardoned him for the deaths that had occurred during his campaign. Japan received him as a hero. Onoda could not adjust to modern Japan. It felt foreign to him, noisier, softer, less certain of itself than the country he had left in 1944. He moved to Brazil. He raised cattle. He lived quietly for years. Eventually, he returned to Japan, where he established a nature school for young people, teaching survival skills, discipline, and self-reliance. He lived to the age of 91. He died on January 16, 2014, exactly 100 years after the world began marching toward the war that had defined him.
What remains?
There is a version of this story where Hiroo Onoda is simply a man who refused to accept reality. And that version is true. But there is another version. A man given an absolute order by someone he trusted completely. A man who kept that promise through hunger, isolation, and the death of every companion he had. A man who did not break.
months. Not in 29 years. The world told him he was wrong. It dropped leaflets from planes. It sent search parties. It published newspapers. It held his funeral without him. He did not believe any of it. Because the one person whose word he trusted had not yet spoken. That is not madness. That is something rarer and far more dangerous. It is faith.